Guys, Mark here, and today we need to talk about glass, specifically the glass that lives here, on the back of a lot of modern smartphones. Now, I'm probably going to get quite a bit of pushback on the overall sentiment of this video, but I think something important needs to be said about glass. It's not all it's cracked up to be. The reason I'm making this video is because I'm seeing a lot of people get either angry or disappointed at certain manufacturers making upper mid-range phones that have plastic backs. Most recently, that would be the Samsung S21 with its polycarbonate back. And I think this anger or disappointment is just a little bit misguided. The physical properties of glass have two main benefits: look and feel, and scratch resistance. The first one I suspect is the biggest for most of you. Glass just ends up feeling a little bit more expensive and premium than a polycarbonate material most of the time. And I'm not doubting that at all. Even I personally like the look and feel of glass more than plastic. But some manufacturers are getting really good with their implementation of plastic. It still doesn't look as good or feel as good as glass, but it's getting close. My S20 FE felt absolutely fantastic in the hand, even though it was plastic. Likewise, so does the S21. It has a bit of a soft feel to it, and the matte coating on the back makes fingerprints virtually impossible to see. The Pixel 5 technically has a metal frame, but everything you touch on the back of the phone is textured plastic, and I actually like how it feels to hold more than most glass phones, including my beloved iPhone 12 mini. With regards to scratch resistance, you'll know that glass tends to scratch at a level 6 on the Mohs scale of hardness if you've ever watched a jerry-rig everything video. Something like metal keys, coins, or a utility knife shouldn't be able to scratch it, whereas a polycarbonate plastic scratches at a level 3 or a level 4. So yeah, glass definitely beats plastic in that regard. No arguments here. But that's pretty much where the good ends when it comes to all glass smartphones, because even though it feels great when you're holding it, what happens if you're suddenly not holding it? Phones made of glass aren't exactly the best when it comes to drop protection, and while phones with plastic backs still have glass on the display, plastic backs are much more resistant to drops. Plastic has a bit of a flexible nature, even the rigid plastic on modern smartphones, so when it hits the ground, it's able to resist a lot of that shock a lot better than glass. Now, I know what you're thinking. I use a case on my phone, so I'm not really worried about the drop protection or the drop resistance of plastic or glass. That's fair. I do too a lot of the time. But if you use a case on your phone, then why are you worried how the phone feels in the first place, or how scratch resistant it is? By putting a case on your phone, you just eliminated two of the biggest advantages of having a phone made entirely of glass. And glass's propensity to shatter when dropped is not the only downside of a phone with a glass back. Glass is a whole lot more expensive to produce than plastic is, so you're going to end up paying a lot more upfront for a glass phone than a plastic phone with the same specs. Here's a prime example for you. Last year's S20 started at a price of $1,000 US, whereas this year's S21 starts at $800, a full $200 less. The S20 did come with 12 gigs of RAM as opposed to 8 in the S21, and technically the S20's screen is a higher resolution, even though you can't use both 1440p and 120Hz at the same time, but the biggest difference between those two phones is the glass back on the S20 and the plastic back on the S21. Almost everything else is the same or better on the S21. You get a faster Snapdragon 888 processor, a new, more modern-looking design, and some new camera features like the Director's Mode. And it's $200 cheaper than when the S20 was released. Another point in favor of plastic is that phones with a plastic back tend to be a lot lighter. For some people, that weight contributes to the premium feel of a phone, and they actually prefer a heavier glass phone. But for me personally, though, I prefer a lightweight phone. I just find it a lot more comfortable to use. The difference between the S21 and the S21 Ultra in weight is just staggering. The S21 feels like you're holding something as light as a feather, and the Ultra just feels like you're holding a brick. A somewhat petty thing I don't love about glass phones is that they also tend to show up a lot of fingerprints. Some manufacturers have figured out how to reduce or eliminate them with a textured back, like Apple and the iPhone 12 Pro or even the S21 Ultra to some degree, but I think the point stands that the vast majority of glass smartphones are absolute fingerprint magnets. Contrary to a somewhat popular belief, plastic also doesn't interfere with a lot of modern high-end features that phone manufacturers are pushing right now, like wireless charging or, more recently, 5G connectivity. You know how a lot of phones have those antenna lines running through the metal frames? Those are actually plastic to prevent the metal from interfering with your cell phone's connection. Plastic, like glass, has a very high radio signal transparency, so getting a good connection should never be an issue with plastic-backed phones. So let's review here. Phones with a plastic back are more resistant to breaking or shattering on impact. They're more lightweight. They don't interfere with 5G connectivity or wireless charging. They're cheaper to produce, and therefore manufacturers can pass off those savings in the form of a cheaper phone, and they're cheaper to fix if broken. The only downsides to a plastic phone is how it feels to hold, and they're a little bit easier to scratch. Marques ran a poll earlier last year asking nearly 300,000 people if they had a case on their phone, and almost 80% of them said yes. So if the vast majority of you put a case on your phone anyway, wouldn't you rather have a lighter phone for a lower cost? I certainly would. Look, I'm not suggesting that we ostracize glass phones or anything like that. I think glass phones definitely have a place in the upper echelons of the smartphone market, in the iPhone 12 Pro Maxes and the S21 Ultras of the world. Can you imagine the uproar if Apple released a $1,500 phone with a plastic back? Nobody wants that, myself included. If I'm paying over $1,000 for a phone, it better have the best of the best when it comes to materials. But when it comes to the upper mid-range market, between, let's say, $500 and $800, I'd much rather have a phone with a plastic back and flagship tier specs than a phone with a glass back and mediocre internals. Anyway, that's my rant. This video's gone on long enough. I'd love to know what you guys think about this though, so leave a comment down below whether you agree or you disagree. And if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to support my channel. And as always, have a great day.